on the treatment of labor replacements as Christians, June 6, 2025. How we treat slaves after we stop using them will be important in the next few years, because at the rate things are going now, we'll be importing more slaves than needed when the robots start finally competing with them, especially here in Canada. Now, if you're shocked right now, it's because you likely went to public school and can't fathom the idea of being slaves a thing at all these days, let alone something you use. But rest assured, my friends, we have a slave class. They're just not privately owned anymore. They're corporately employed. Don't believe me? Go get your own coffee for once. At the nearest rainbow-clad Starbucks you can find. Go at noon and see how many skip-the-dishes drivers show from the time you get to the store, from the time you leave, with your caramel macchiato. I get it. It's not whips and manual labor, just whipped topping on top of the coffee, and some beck and call servitude that makes this underpaid minority that's employed bring the white woman their fraps. Go to Wendy's next and see the same lineup of servants, headed dutifully to the store at the sound of the bell on their apps to fetch baconators for the middle class that know sharing a slave service with 1,000 people beats owning 1,000 slaves and all the needed infrastructure and resources to do so. We still have slaves. They just have flexible hours and a bit of mobility. But make no mistake, as horrible as I can make the treatment of the service workers sound, I'm still on the side of the fight that wants them to be gainfully employed and providing for themselves and their families, because I actually care for the poor. Not just because the service level employees can afford service level replacements that will be bought instead of keeping them on the payroll, and that replacement will be a robot. All a robot Amazon driver needs to be is bite-proof for the odd dog, and as accurate a driver as the flesh and bone one was for GPS. It will never sue the company for getting bit by the dog, and it can't be sued for not registering that the obstruction in the road was a child and not a pothole. They'll paint the robot car high-vis yellow and blame the victim, and fire the immigrant either way, because all the car has to do is be cheaper than 1 year's wages of the slave. At which point the cost line goes down on the graph, and the shareholders will all but demand, or be presumed to demand, that the higher cost human resources be demoted to Amazon customer from employee. Which now of these three thinkest thou that the neighbor unto him that fell among thieves? For the poor ye always have with you, but me ye have not always. Luke 10:36 and John 12:8, King James Version. If everything goes according to the plans that we are not a part of or have influence over in our secularized culture, we are about to have a bunch of suddenly poor people who look as foreign as the Samaritan did to the Jew. People who were promised a new life and new opportunities here in Canada, only to receive a new form of poverty at the hands of the newest machines. There's a reason we got an easy-to-read book about how to treat slaves in Philemon. And a reason why most of the evangelical world is scared of the implications of what a book about the treatment of slaves could mean. We adaptively pivoted away from the chattel slavery comparisons of the American Deep South and forgot that one of the unfortunate but predictable realities of the poor is to become a slave. And that's how we treat the poor. And how we treat the poor and slave might coincide in the grace of Christ in his expectation for our behavior. Because if Jesus meant what he said about the poor, it would necessarily mean that modern slaves would line up beside the modern poor as well. And in all this complication and concern for the plight of the poor and how to properly sell perfume as a church, we are adequately kept busy enough not to notice the modern slave class's impending doom. And briefly, we find ourselves as busy as Martha and as calloused as the Jew and the Levite all the same, because these poor slaves are Hindus who are exponentially more different than us to Christians, as the Samaritans were to the Jew and the Levite. Or they're Muslims, and oppositionally different to us and the Jews and the Levites. And we find ourselves in this well-orchestrated chaos that mixes the abuses of tech against the poor with and against the benevolence and mercy of the faithful. So that most courses of actions that we could take betray a moral value we would otherwise not compromise on. You could free the slaves by adopting the robot, but that does make them poor. And you could employ the poor by forbidding the robots to work, but it essentially enslaves them. This is what sin and brokenness look like, and not dealing with the issues as if they were sin and brokenness is what causes the angst you currently feel. Tech titans need to stop what they're doing and repent, sacrificing all the market share that they could have made by the commodification of laziness to a God who can actually forgive sins. Their workers also need to repent and find Jesus as God, who knows what it's like to be born into poverty and to live in heavenly wealth and power as well. And the Christians stuck in the middle need to repent of where they got stuck in the middle, even if they didn't get completely stuck, and all of them need to find themselves in a church next Sunday, and the rich should be giving to those who need, those in need from the poor, 1 Timothy 6:17-19, and the poor should be serving with the money as if their money was worth more than it actually ever could be, Mark 12:41-44. And the unbeliever needs to become a believer, and we all need to be looking forward to a day where there are no deliveries, no KPIs, no payroll, and no slaves, but unto Christ, Romans 6:15-23. That last verse came from a letter sent to a slave-owning empire on the telltale signs of decline all the same. They had less robots and less apps on their phones, but they still had the poor the way we have the poor. And it's almost like Jesus knew how that works. The thing that hath been is that which it shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. There is no new thing under the sun. Ecclesiastes 1:9, King James Version.